This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cliff Yates Show. I'm really excited about today's guest. He's on the same wavelength as I am. His website, Wits and Weights. So we're talking about health and fitness, and you know that's my thing and that's his thing, and how we can have a positive impact on anybody who we can that we want to see get fitter. And in our cases, I think more muscular. It's really important to have strength along with not only a positive mindset, but your body goes along with that mind-body relationship. He's all into that, and I can't wait to learn what he's all about. I'm just going to bring him right on. Philip Pape, thanks for joining me today, brother.
Cliff, man, thanks for having me on. Very excited.
How did you get on the road to fitness and working out and being in shape and diet and nutrition and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. You and I were talking about back in the 80s, right? I was born in 1980. So right now I'm 43, but that puts me into the age of what a lot of folks that I work with are, where a lot of us with desk jobs, are just are not that fit. We're pretty sedentary, and life kind of catches up to you. And I was not into athletics. I was not in the gym culture or working out for most of my life until my 30s. I joined CrossFit, and that was the first time I touched a barbell. That was the first time I thought about this stuff and developed some conditioning and things like that. But it was fun. But it also has, it has its pros and cons. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was about 40 years old that I finally found the world of lifting for strength, focusing on building muscle, and then all the nutrition and flexible dieting that goes with it to fuel your body. So that's the 100,000 foot level. We can dive deeper depending on what you want to talk about.
Sure. And you're basically, you have coaching programs, right, with nutrition and strength training?
Yes, it's primarily focused on nutrition, although I'm launching a new group program called Wits Weights Physique University, where we are going to have monthly programs that I drop for different types of equipment settings and days per week and stuff like that. Because I usually avoided it up till now because I don't want to be a personal trainer per se. I'd rather focus on the nutrition side. However, everyone I work with has to be training to build muscle, because that's how it works. When you want to lose fat, you've got to be training, and we can get into that. So yeah, there you go. That's what my coaching focus is on.
Yeah, I was telling you off camera that I was involved in this coaching program, but I think so. I think that should be. So you make sure that it's a requirement. You have to agree that you're going to be in some kind of strength or exercise program to be coached by you, right?
Yeah, it's like a blood pact. You have to cut your wrist open and give me a vial of your blood, and then agree that you're going to train. No, for real. You've got to be, because you mentioned fitness and you mentioned strength and muscle, and a lot of people disconnect the idea of building muscle and strength with overall health and fitness. Sometimes they think of it as bodybuilding or just physique, but I would argue that muscle is more important than weight loss. Muscle is more important even than your diet long-term for your health and longevity. And then the dieting and the food and all that becomes a lot easier once you build muscle. So that's where I come from.
Yeah. And I'm just learning, how, basically through the strength training exercises, how you're emptying the cells. Is it glycation or, you're emptying the glucose out of the cells, and you're actually clearing your bloodstream of the of glucose, so that you can move. And I didn't even know you could do this, but you can move from insulin resistance to insulin sensitivity, which really, insulin opens the door to bring the nutrients into the cell. Otherwise, it shuts it off.
Yeah, we're jumping right into the science.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to get into that, but
that's
I'm fascinated by it.
Some hosts don't want to talk about that, and I know you're learning about a lot of this stuff yourself too. There's glycolytic activity, which requires glycogen as the primary source of fuel, and that includes both high intense activities but also heavy lifting. It's why I love carbs when you're building muscle. I'm a big fan of carbs, but also the insulin sensitivity you get from building muscle. It's like a battery or a sink for that glucose.
Yeah.
And that is a great point, because I've got clients who've trained for maybe 20 years. They got a bunch of muscle, but they might be overweight by BMI standards or even visual standards. And yet they've got great health. Like their blood markers are really solid, because that muscle is so protective of them against metabolic disease.
Yes.
They may not have great VO2 max and sort of cardio markers of health, and we can work on that.
Yeah.
But longevity markers are good. Yeah.
I'm glad that, I'm thankful now that what happened was when I was in high school, I wanted to be on the basketball team and the football. I wanted to be on those things. And oh my God, I was just so skinny. I could not put any weight on. I mean, it was a psychological thing, man. I had an inferiority complex with that, to the point, and just people were cruel just with my skinniness, man. I really was made fun of because of it. And so because of that, luckily I had a couple of coaches, man, who just hey, Rome wasn't built in a day. Come down and use the weight room. And man, I got infatuated and obsessed with weight training, gaining size, started getting into, I read every muscle and fitness magazine at the time, every powerlifting magazine, and it got me to a great deal of knowledge with how to tear down and build muscle and how it all works. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, to the point for 20 years, I was just, I was so, I don't care if I have fat. I just need to gain weight and get size. I actually gained 50 pounds in 1 year.
All right.
Yeah, I drank six.
I've been there.
I drank 6 quarts of whole milk a day without fail, and because I just wanted to get bigger. And so I was not good on the nutrition size, but I was so in my head, I don't care. I want to get size, and so I did get it. And then later, when I joined the LA Sheriff's Department, moved from upstate New York to LA, and they were really big into running and cardio, and I struggled. So then I had to kind of slowly get into that, and now I've kind of married the two, so I'm glad that I have kind of the knowledge base on both. And when I got into the bodybuilders culture out in LA, they're really big on movement and muscle building, and so I'm glad I was able to marry those two, and you're into that too, so maybe you can speak on how your knowledge base came about in that.
Yeah. And before I do, you remind me of, there's a show on Netflix called Physical 100, I think it's called. Have you heard of this?
I haven't seen that.
Physical 100 just came out. It's a Korean show, but they dub it in English, and it's kind of corny, how they do the voices on the Korean, But what it is, it's these 100 people from Korea who are athletic in different ways, okay, and they all have different physiques. So you've got bodybuilders, wrestlers, special forces, firemen, a dancer. You've got YouTube influencers who are somehow tied into movement or fitness.
Yeah,
and they're all coming together to compete and kind of prove that there's not a one size fits all way to be fit, and that even your physique isn't always outwardly an indicator of that.
That's right.
And everyone has different goals. So I don't like to be dogmatic about it, but I also think it's important, like you said, to go after the goal you want and also work with people who are in that area of expertise. You can always shift to something else if that's a different area you want to focus in. So the way I got into it is probably because I was, I was a dad, having my first child. That was the first time I started focusing on fitness, and I didn't want the dad bod, right?
Right.
I was just getting fluffy. So unlike you, who was skinny when you were younger, I was always a little overweight.
Gotcha.
And either way, we've all got body image issues, of some kind or another that.
Yeah, you're right.
Self-imposed, or society puts it on us, whatever. Let's just walk around and enjoy life. But I did that probably for that reason of being a dad and wanting to be a good role model and have energy and right? But then after 10 years or so of that, I wasn't getting the physique I wanted. And to me, a pretty good physique is a reflection of the hard work you put in. And if you're doing all the hard work, and not getting the physique, you get discouraged.
Absolutely,
So that's where I got into, okay, what's the singular path that's the most efficient for my time?
Yes.
You've got who am I? What kind of person am I that I can relate to? Well, I'm the type of person who works hard for a living. I don't have gobs of free time. I want to have quality time with my wife and kids as well, and pursue some hobbies on the side. But I also like to be an entrepreneur. So you're kind of balancing all these, saying, well, how do I fit in workouts? I can't do 3-hour a day workouts. I can't do the Arnold two a days, So
right.
So what's the most efficient use of my time? And to me, that was lifting heavy. For strength, knowing that I could get both strength and muscle, kind of a 2-for-1 if I did it the right way, and then letting nutrition fuel that. And that way I didn't have to do lots of conditioning. I didn't have to do lots of cardio. I could walk, in my free time during the day, or pacing around the house, and et cetera, and maybe do cardio here and there. But for my time, thinking as an engineer, that was the approach of building muscle that way.
You are so on, and we talked about it off camera, and you're going to be so surprised when I tell you, I mean, you're right on with what Mark Sisson promotes. And, I always, just from the bodybuilding knowledge, I always bought into it's kind of a weeder principle, kind of a split routine deal, because I believe, once you flush blood into the upper body, whatever you're working on, I mean, you don't want to, in the same routine, start working legs and flush body out of those muscle tissues into the bottom half. So I kind of believed into I do a chest back one day, shoulders, arms, then a legs, and then I'll repeat it. But I noticed that I was in the gym. I go, man, I got all my, basically like 12 sets. 35 minutes, I'm done. I'm not in the gym 2 hours. Maybe I'm not doing enough. And then I'm going through Mark Sisson's thing, and he's like, well, you shouldn't be in the gym more than 35 minutes. You should be able to do, high intensity lifting, heavy weights, and get out of there. And I go, well, I'm actually doing the right thing. Yeah. Do you kind of go along with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, again, I hit on what you're hitting on is the stimulus you get versus the fatigue and the recovery.
Yeah.
So what's the most you can get for your time? Now, for me, these days, I tend to work out 4 days a week, and it's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But I've also worked out 6 days a week for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I've also worked out 3 days a week for an hour. And it depends on how much volume you're trying to get in there, what your goal is. Are you going for maximal strength? Are you trying to build muscle, right? What phase are you in of your periodization, all that fancy stuff, right? For a beginner, like if someone's listening, you're like, okay, these guys are getting a little complicated here. What do I do? Like, I would say 3 days in the gym for no more than an hour tops. Like that's with all the long rest periods you need and everything. No more than 45 minutes to an hour to do like 3 or 4 movements. Squats, deadlifts, pressing. That's it. Basic movements. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't. A lot of people surprise. When you're in the realm, you kind of assume people know all this stuff, but. Sometimes it's amazing that people don't realize, you're not growing in the gym. You're actually tearing down in the gym, and you're growing on your rest days. Your body's repairing in preparation for another hit of exercise, right? So kind of important.
You build muscles while you sleep.
Yeah,
exactly.
They did a study years ago. They had these guys who were, I think they were fishermen. They would go out on these fishing boats and surf for like 3-4 months, high and just work intensive. And then they would have like 4 months of rest where they were back on shore and man, they grew muscles and they got so big because their body had rest for months at a time, and they started preparing for the next bout. And that was a kind of a lesson in fitness, really.
This is the big debate these days in the circles that I run in is volume, intensity, and what am I trying to say? And recovery, right? There's different camps. There's some people who think, you need to hit the maximum load, the maximum intensity on your weights, and you don't need much volume at all. Volume meaning, sets and reps.
Yeah.
Others that think the opposite, like, well, if you go too heavy too often, you're going to, strain your joints and connective tissue and such, especially as you get older. So let's lighten the load a bit. Let's increase the reps and volume.
Yeah.
And kind of balance out. Guess what? They're both right. Like
that's right.
There's a wide range of reps and intensities that can work for you. And some people respond better to one than the other. So if you're feeling beat up all the time, whatever you're doing is not optimal.
No, that's right.
No matter if somebody says it's the right thing. So that's where you have to experiment and run something for a while, see how it works. Also, Cliff, man, I mean, I had surgery last year, and when you're recovering from something like that, everything changes.
It does,
It's smart about it. So
what happened to you?
I had rotator cuff surgery. I just got a tear. Who knows how it happened? It happens to everybody, but I'm coming back. It didn't take long to get back in the gym and start training again. It's just you gotta mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, Joe Weider used to call it's muscle confusion principle. Your muscles get used to a certain routine, so switch it up. Like you were saying. Yeah. But man, I'm glad I never had rotator. I had a lot of friends who had shoulder injuries, so I'm really careful about warming the shoulder up and what kind of movements I'm doing to get all 3 heads of the shoulder. But I've never had a shoulder injury, but I'm kind of conscious of it because I have friends who, man, I can't lift my hand over my head. And I go, oh my God, I don't want that, trying to.
No, I think shoulders and back are the 2 most complained about areas. Shoulders and back, other than like maybe hip flexors or something. But with so if I could just address those,
please,
for a second.
No, go with whatever you want to do with. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like low back pain is very common, right? Because the majority of people after the age of like 28 or something, they have some degenerative issue in their back. Everybody has it almost.
Yeah.
And if you're not using the muscles that support your spine, it's just going to get worse and worse.
Yep.
And if you sit a lot, it's going to get worse and worse. No offense. Cause I stand now when I do my podcast.
That's a good idea. I should start doing that. Yeah.
If I sit too long, it just starts to not feel great. But I can't tell you how many people I got them deadlifting and they're like, man, my back just feels great now. And it's this counterintuitive thing because people think, oh, deadlifting isn't that bad for your back. Well, you tell me, like, what is deadlifting? It's picking something off the ground using muscles. What supports your spine? Muscles. I would rather have a strong bad back than a weak bad back, if you know what I mean.
I want to just hit on that because you are hitting on this. So here's the 10 laws. It's going to hit with what you're saying. So here's Mark Sisson's 10 primal laws, right? So his first law is, which I really like. So, and we'll get into the nutrition later, but the first couple are, he's into eating meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, staying away from grains, sugars, and chemically altered oils. And then he's into number 3, move a lot. Mm-hmm. And then 4, lift heavy things every once in a while into deadlifting and it's carrying heavy weight. Yeah. And then 5, sprint every 7 to 10 days. It creates a hormonal thing, sprinting, because in primal days, that's what every once in a while you had to sprint for food or whatever. Then 6 was get plenty of sleep. 7 was play. 8, get plenty of sunlight. 9, don't do stupid things like text and drive or something that's going to get you hurt. 10 is obviously, well, not obviously, but is to keep learning new things and engage the brain. But he's so into like lift heavy things. So I started using that. What is it called? A hex bar or whatever, where you step in it?
Trap bar, hex bar. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I've been lifting. So like once a week I do that heavy weights. And I can't, even though before I was doing hyperextensions and then core workout, I think lifting the heavy things really, that weight bearing on the skeletal, speak to that. I think it's so healthy.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're lifting, when you're doing a deadlift, think of the muscles you're using. Always think of these as movement patterns. Like, don't necessarily think of them as muscle groups. Think of them as movement patterns, your system, your whole body.
Yeah.
When you lift and you do it, you have to do it properly. Your back is set pretty neutrally.
Yeah.
You're using your legs. You're really driving with your legs. It's a leg exercise. It's a hamstring dominant exercise. And you're pushing this thing away from the earth. It's almost like you're pushing the earth away from you.
Yes, exactly.
You're squeezing your shoulder blades back. You're keeping that bar close to you so it comes up vertically and you're just driving up, right? It's this really powerful movement. It's the most heavy thing you could possibly do as a human is just lift something off the ground. While you're lifting it, what is your back doing? It's constantly in an isometric contraction the entire way.
Yeah.
Right. So think of these like the erector spinae, which are the ropes, ropes, right?
Correct.
They're
like
ropes that go down along your spine. Just imagine them holding like your whole torso together. And those are just tight. And that's giving them a massive stimulus that you can't get without load.
You got to be loading. Yeah.
So now, once you've done that for 400 pounds, 3 times, it doesn't take a lot of volume, three reps at 400 pounds. You've just now made it where those muscles have to adapt the next time to come back stronger. And what's in the middle of them? Well, your spine. Your weak little spine is in between these strong, big rope-like muscles. Now the rope-like muscles are holding you up, not the spine. So there's much less load on that spine. It's
all about the engaged, the supportive muscles that have to interact to lift that weight. Everything gets engaged. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, I can go on. And then, I mean, the rest of your body, humans, when you talk about primal and you talk about Mark Sisson, one of the things that comes up for me also is we are not perfectly designed creatures. Like, we evolved over eons to be just good enough.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, that means we have lots of flaws in our design. Like, if an engineer designed a human, it would look weird compared to what we look like. Okay. And as a result, it's easy to injure certain things if you're using either poor form or too much repetition, volume, whatever. So the shoulders are like this really vulnerable, joint with a floating socket in there, right?
It's amazing the way it's designed, right? Yeah.
It is. When you look at if you looked at like inside and you look at when somebody lifts their arm, it's detached and your rotator cuff is kind of supporting this cup this socket sitting in there,
Yeah.
which is what it's designed to do. It's designed to do that.
It's perfect.
But but you could easily overdo it when, for example, when you bench press. When you bench press and you come down and you're extending outward, if you do a lot of that and it's heavy at the bottom and you're just slamming out of the bottom, that repetitive motion there can start to strain on the rotator cuff.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And so you just have to be smart. If it starts to aggravate you, get creative about altering the movement, right? Different bars, different grips, different widths, different inclines on the bench. Like there's a lot of variety. But don't make an excuse not to do some form of horizontal press. Yeah,
exactly. It's funny. And it inspires me. My mom's 88, and so she's. I had her on the podcast, and she said, "Oh, well, you inspired me when you were 16, and you'd be in the basement sweating." And so me and my wife at our summer place in upstate New York, we were on an island, so we had a treadmill and whatever we could use. And so she started walking on the treadmill. And so to this day, so she's 88, she walks 3 times a week, 3 to 4 miles each time. And the other day she was here in Florida and she did a plank for 1.5 minutes, right? Perfectly, nice. Not to cheat, with his hands full. And so she had a couple of friends that passed away, but she was like, she couldn't understand. She goes, I can't understand why these people, they will not do any form of exercise. Well, what good does it do anyways? I mean, at our age, that's their thing at our age. And my mom is now into I can't believe they don't want to get better or stay strong, Do you find that mindset with people even younger?
Oh my God, you've hit on a sore point. Or not a sore point with me. This is like the crux of why I do this and why I think every human being should lift weights.
Yes, me too.
I think you have to do that. I think you have to, because I think, again, if you want to throw the primal thing in there, like we evolved to move things around in our physical environment, and we just don't live that way in the wild. So we kind of have to make up for it with, pieces of iron. That's how we do it, or cables, or bands, or whatever. Yeah. And so, the idea of, we're just getting old is backward.
It's bullshit.
I like to say, you prevent that, because that'll happen if you don't lift weights, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't lift weights, you're going to lose your muscle mass, get frail. You're going to break your bones. You're going to fall and have to go to the hospital. They're going to put you on drugs. You're going to get pneumonia, and then you're going to be on you're going to either die or have 20 medications you have to take the rest of your life.
So,
just to paint a dire picture, that's true.
No. And a matter of fact, you have sparked something in me, because I'm finishing his coaching program. And I think it's going to be like you have. It's a mandatory that you are either involved in or agree to be in an exercise program. Otherwise, I'm not going to be coaching you, because you can't have one without the other. Nutrition alone is not for metabolic health, really, is what we're after.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely. I mean, I'll put it this way: you could definitely go from your current nutrition to far better nutrition.
Yes. As
one variable, and that will help. Like more protein, which most people don't get nearly enough protein, for example. No. But without training, you're going to lose muscle mass. So I like to address whatever the person's goal is. If their goal is to have a better physique and feel better and look better, we have the conversation about that and not about weight loss, because a lot of people say their goal is to lose weight. And I ask them why. They say, well, I want to look better. Okay, well, did you know that if you lost weight, you're not going to look better? But if you lose fat only and not muscle, you are. So let's focus on building muscle and losing fat, not just losing weight on the scale. And at the end of the day, man, Cliff, I've gone through 3 or 4 cut and bulk cycles myself, and every time I get heavier, I'm leaner. It's the wildest thing. Like every time I build muscle and then I cut, I don't have to cut nearly as much. And today I could sit at 190 on the scale and be leaner than I was back then at 160 on the scale. Yeah. That's the magic of having more muscle.
Yeah, definitely more muscle is the way to go. And I just, I love all these, there's there's evidence-based science. People in their 70s, 80s have gained muscle even at that age and lost fat. And there's just no getting around. Honestly, I can't understand people who don't want to do that, but I come across them every once in a while, right? I mean, you might be in a group of people, I know we travel with a group to New York every year for a while, and one of the group was my wife and I were going to take in the gym at the Hilton there on 6th and 53rd, and people are, do you have to work out? We're all gonna die, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just the mentality, right? It's just I can't.
Mentality.
Yeah.
mentality. And listen, if you want to be in optimal health, that's going to put you in the less than 5% of humanity doing that. And so you're going to have to accept that you are weird and you are different and you are an outlier and you have the courage to be so. And the rest of them can go F themselves because they don't care about their health. And I'd love to inspire them and be a role model. And if everyone around me can, even one person can say, well, all right, I see this is finally working. I'm going to stop making excuses, because that's what they're doing. They're telling themselves these things. It's
correct.
They're saying it to you, but they're really telling themselves as an excuse, unconsciously or not. And then if they finally decide, okay, let me listen to you, or tell me what I can do, then we've impacted somebody, right? And helped them with better health. Yeah.
Usually they have to get to a health crisis before they all of a sudden get spurned onto, hey, I want to do something now. I'm onto this guy. I don't know if you heard of him, Peter Attia. Man. He's like into that. He's training for the centenarian triathlon. In other words, I want to live to be 100. And I think a lot of his impact is because he's like, okay, I'm shooting for those 10 to 15 years between, or 80 to 90, where I want to be able to get on and off the floor, up and down, to lift up my grandkids. I want to be able to do these movements. And so he's really into it, man. And sometimes he gets down in the weeds. I don't mind it, but I can see how dry he can be for like 2 hours, right? He's so into the science. But he's hey, what do you think about, he's into this, and I'm thinking about trying it. He's into rucking. What do you think about that?
I love it. I mean, rucking is just a way to make walking harder,
Yeah, that's right.
It just gives you a tiny bit of a strength component to your walking. It burns a few more calories, a little bit, you get closer to the zone 2 more easily. It's funny you mentioned that, because over the summer I was doing more rucking, and I was trying to kind of get into that.
So you've done it. That's great.
Yeah. It's backpack, throw some weights in there and go for a walk. It's really all it is. There's a calculation I usually tell people of how much weight to do, but I don't remember what it is. Yeah. I weigh 80-ish pounds, so I usually throw 25 to 40 pounds in my back, so kind of go from there. But first couple times you do it, you might have some really sore traps, or your back might be a little bit achy, because you got to wear one of those rucksacks that come around your waist to have all the harnesses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I usually tell people, if they want to get more for their time, I'm a big fan of efficiency, and you're going to go for a walk. Either walk faster or add some weight, and you'll get more for that same walk without taking any more time.
Yeah.
So I love rucking, man. It's great.
I read this book, Late to the Ball, and it was about this guy who was competing in tennis tournaments in his 60s. And so I got into tennis because I think it's just so ultimate as far as mind, body. Number one, your mind has to constantly be calculating speed, distance, direction of the ball, and in relation to that, moving your body in anticipation of where ball's going to be into a hit mode. And I just think it's so good for the mind and body. And I'm running into these people. I have a local tennis club here. I mean, these guys are in their 80s, man, and they're really doing well. They're moving well. I haven't taken a pickleball. I don't like it, but I guess I'll try it. But I'm like, to me, it's for people that can't move. It's like, you know what I mean? Oh, since you don't want to be in shape, you can play this. You know what I mean?
I kind of know what you mean. It's like, it's almost a bandwagon thing when my wife and I talk about it, like, oh, there's another pickleball player. But I don't want to knock it because I haven't tried it. And honestly, anything that gets people to move because it's fun, I'm all for it. So
it's like, what's the best exercise? Anything you're going to do, you know what I mean, is going to be, that's the best program. Yeah. I really got into Mark Sis's thing. I harp on it because I'm in the middle of it for like 8 months now. But
I get it.
He's on the move a lot. I'm really started to transition to it. So I might, because I was in the habit of, he warned against this. First, he warned against chronic cardio, man, where you think, I got to be on the treadmill for 2 hours. And so now, and he's really into walking and whatnot. So now, and we're on the beach here, so now I walk on the beach. But I was probably in that category where I got in the gym, man. I'm consistent. I do my weight training. I was in the gym for an hour and I got all my workout in. And now I'm home and I'm not moving anymore the rest of the day. Wait a minute. No, it's better that, I do a 20, 30-minute workout and maybe I walk 20 and then after dinner I walk another 20. We're moving a lot throughout the day instead of one hit and then nothing, right?
Yeah, and there's a subtlety there that you pointed out people don't think about. And a lot of us think of two types of movements. We think like strength training and then cardio of some kind. And some people will lump cardio, walking into cardio. I like to think of it as lifting, movement, and not being sedentary.
Right.
So that's a key thing.
Yeah.
So lifting, movement, and not sitting, not being sedentary, because studies have shown there's an independent beneficial effect of just not sitting around
Yeah.
above and beyond the moving and the training. So, and you're like,
Yeah.
but wait, isn't that the same thing? But no, it isn't. Because like you said, you can lift weights for an hour full on, then you can sit around all day. Or you can lift weights for an hour full on and maybe go for 2 walks and sit around all day. Or you can lift weight, go for walks and not sit around all day. It's a subtle different thing of constantly always moving, standing, taking breaks, like just not sitting around for very long. And it is associated with better health.
Yeah, and I don't think most people don't realize, right? Your lymph nodes, which, filter out all these poisons, the heart has a pump and the lungs with breath. The lymph does not have anything to move it through the lymph nodes except movement and deep breathing. And if you're not doing it, and that's why, you could actually, if you were in a hospital and never moved, you could actually poison yourself to death. People don't realize that movement and deep breathing is the only thing that pushes lymph through the system, right?
Yeah, and we can get into science, or we can just tell people, look,
how
do you
yeah.
feel?
Just move, damn it. Yeah.
how do you feel when you sit around all day, and then versus how do you feel when you move? Like when you go on a trip, and you're walking around, you go to a big city or something, you walk around all day, or you go visit the historical sites. How do you feel? Like, don't you feel pretty good that you've been moving? You almost feel like, hey, I should do this more often.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, at least. And when I'm sitting around, and I have to work a lot at home on a computer. And so, yeah, I'm sitting around and I just have to remember, get up, get your ass up and, move around, just keep it going.
Yeah. So I just visited my mom in upstate New York, Rochester, New York. And so it was only 2 hours and 30-minute flight. But then I had to be conscious. Oh, you're free to get up and move about the cabin. I go, I'm going to get up. I do some exercises. I do like a stretch. I do some calf raises. And so when I have the opportunity, when I'm on a plane, I actually do my own little exercise routine. So do you do things like that yourself, or?
Maybe not. Depends how crazy I want to look, but I like where you're going, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the truth. I might do it 30 seconds, but the point is, I think it's important to move, stretch, and then you sit down and you're like, oh, another hour would be easy. I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, yesterday I was kind of locked in a room for 4 hours with like 8 other folks. We were brainstorming on something. And I sat for a straight several hours and I stood up and I'm like, ooh, my body rebelled. It's that feeling. It's kind of like when you go to sleep at night and your whole body just decompresses into bed because it's been so wound up all day.
Yeah.
It was like the opposite of that. It was like, it was like that. I stood up and my body said, okay, finally you're giving me some relief. And I'm reminded, stop sitting around all day.
Stop sitting around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Have you followed any bodybuilders in your past, or anybody that did you ever get into that, or did you ever get into bodybuilding per se?
I never got into the competitive side or wanting to do that. Cause honestly, I don't want to diet as much as it takes to be a competitive bodybuilder. But one of the guys who got me into all of this back in 2020, Dr. Eric Helms.
Eric Helms. I don't think I know him.
Yeah, he wrote the Muscle and Strength Pyramids. He's out of Auckland. One of the big, well-known guys in the evidence-based space.
Oh, I'll check that.
He's been on my podcast a couple of times too. Really nice guy. But he is a natural bodybuilder. So I like natural bodybuilders.
Oh, so do I. Yeah.
As much as the visual of the enhanced guys is impressive and it's amazing. I love the art from Arnold on, right? Ronnie Coleman and all those guys.
Yes.
Yates,
they're still going at it. Yeah. Ronnie Coleman's still alive, doing well. Yeah.
It's impressive, but I think it's equally, if not more impressive for doing it naturally, which when you see a natural bodybuilder on stage and you're so used to seeing these big freaks,
it looks,
these hulks, you're like, okay, it's not as impressive, but man, when you kind of get the close up and you see all the sinewy definition that they've built, they've now dieted down to a ridiculous state of leanness.
Yeah.
By the way, anybody listening, that is not healthy for any length of time. These guys do it quickly and then they get out of it. They recover.
12 weeks, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it might take longer to actually diet into it, Cliff.
Oh, yeah.
Natural guys, it might take them like 6 months.
You're right. Yeah.
Down, or even 8, but they take they go gradually and get there. But when you see these guys, it is impressive. And Dr. Eric Helms, he just got his pro card this year at the WNBF.
Oh my God, that's great.
The world. I don't think he got it at the Worlds. He got it at one of the competitions before the Worlds. But the reason I appreciate those guys is because they're natural. They know how to get it done naturally, and the stuff that they teach you we can all apply as everyday
Yeah.
lifestyle fitness enthusiasts, and so some of his principles have changed my thinking over the years. Like, as much I do track macros and calories, and all my clients do as well, or big fans of data and tracking. I don't want you to be perfect and have to hit exact targets. I'd rather you have minimums and then have a lot of flexibility above that, based on your goals. And he kind of, reminded me of that the science doesn't say you have to have this exact much protein, fat, carbs. You know what I mean? It's just, you need to hit some minimum for what your goal is. And the rest is anything goes, let's say.
Yeah, I'm into that now. I'm trying to make sure that I get enough grams of protein. I think that's where I was falling down on. I'm learning. My body's burning fat, but I want to make sure I just, in my mind, I want to maintain size, and it's getting better because now I'm actually, even though I don't want to be I don't want to get to where weighing food and measuring everything, but it is important to make sure you're getting the grams of protein. And once you habituate those meals and know what they are, you don't have to so closely mark them down. You know that this meal is going to be 28, 30 grams of protein. 3 eggs is going to be probably 18, 20 grams. And so once you get those down in your head, you can intuitively eat enough to get a proper amount of protein, right?
You put it perfectly. And this is a big debate too. Intuitive eating. There's a lot of coaches out there like, you don't have to count calories, you don't have to weigh food, you can intuitively eat. I'm like, you need to develop the skill of knowing what the heck's going in your mouth to intuitively eat. And if you're eating a bunch of processed food, if you're not eating enough protein, this and that, to go from that to something very different, first of all, you don't want to do it overnight. You want to take your time and do it in a reasonable, take time to get there, one habit at a time. But secondly, to get that level of precision and know that you have, 150 grams of protein instead of the 50 you had, you've got to measure it in some way. Now, maybe that's not a food scale. Maybe that's palms and portions.
That's
and all
right.
That.
Yeah.
If you're working with me as a client, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, we're tracking everything. You're measuring everything. I don't care, because we're going to do it quickly and efficiently in a short period of time. Yeah. And then you can do whatever you want after that, but you'll have trained your brain to know what 150 grams of chicken thigh looks like and what, 100 grams of broccoli looks like.
Yeah.
And you're good to go,
You only have to really do it once or twice. And now and you're conceptually in your mind. It's funny we talk about nutrition. Well, when I was in California, I always liked Arnold and pumping iron and all that stuff. Yeah. But so I was at the Universal City Walk, and then Arnold came through with the torch, I think, for one of the Olympics. And man, so we were around his team and around him, and maybe it was just a bad day. He was such a dick. It's so disappointing to me.
He's a pretty cocky guy, so I could see that.
Yeah, I like him, but because anybody who's still working out in their 70s and they're driven, I like him, but that was my bad experience. I never really liked Lou Ferrigno, and I saw him come in I used to work out at Gold's in Venice, and so he used to come in. I thought, I don't like him too well, and so then. I have a friend who's a producer out there, and he was filming Lou ended up being a reserve deputy sheriff. And so they were filming like a recruitment video. And so he said, come on, can you bring a police car over to the house? We're filming this thing in my backyard for Lou, who's going to do a thing in uniform. Yeah. And man, Lou's turned out to be the greatest guy in the world, man. I mean, his dad had been a cop, I was a cop. So he just wanted to know about me and my wife. And we sat down at lunch for like 2 hours, but it's interesting. And Lou is just perfectly still built, right? And so it was interesting. So my buddy, the producer, he's serving food and everything. Lou wanted to know, well, what's in this, do you want a drink of this? Whoa, wait a minute. He was very careful of what he ate, man.
Oh, sure,
he was on it. I was so impressed by that. But talk about the nicest guy. But man, he had big size. He wasn't on the juice anymore, but he's still big size and cut up, man. But very conscious of everything that went into his mouth.
For sure. I mean, all those guys, even, again, people will criticize or say, well, they're on drugs, but man, you know how hard they work with those drugs. Like they're on the drugs, but man, they have to work their butts off for diet and effort in the gym. And when we think of a bodybuilder, they have to go to a ridiculous level of leanness. We're talking far sub 10% for a man, which a lot of people don't understand what that is. And I've honestly never gotten anywhere close to that. And I wouldn't necessarily want to be, although this year will be the first year I'm going to get more lean than I probably ever have, just for fun is what I call it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of discipline to do that, and sacrifice and trade-offs. And I want people listening who want to be lifestyle lean, who just want to be generally fit, to know it does not take anywhere near that level of neuroticism to an extent to get there. So you can have a lot of flexibility, but still get very lean. However, Cliff, I do want to say, I recently interviewed Dr. Bill Campbell. He was on the show again, and he's big into rapid fat loss, aggressive dieting. He studies at the University of South Florida.
Oh, okay.
And so he looks at different protocols for how do we diet as aggressively as possible, but keep the duration as short as possible so we can lop off as much fat, but get it over with and not lose any muscle. And so it's this like fine line of, we're not crash dieting. We're eating a lot of protein, at least a gram per pound of protein.
Yep. That's what I'm getting now.
Strength training. Yeah. You're strength training to keep the muscle. And then you're dieting very aggressively, like 50% deficit or more. Like in some cases you could be sub 1,000 calories, even for a male, which is very aggressive. But you're doing it in a strict protocol. You're doing it for maybe 4 days. Then you refeed for a day, then maybe 4 days, and then refeed a day, and you're done. Something like that. I just want to mention it because there's like so many ways to skin a cat in this game, depending on your personal tolerance for dieting or not dieting and how long you want to do it or not.
Yeah, that's kind of primal, because we were set up to, hey, we might not get any food for a couple of days, and then when we do, we refeed pretty extensively, and our body is set up to go without meals for, we might get some fish, be interrupted by a bear, have to drop it and run, and then we got to wait till the next day. So we were made to do that, efficiently. So I like.
Yeah, but we don't like to do it.
No, we don't.
Most of us don't. I like to eat, man. But it's funny because, yes, I agree with all that. And I told you before, I used to be in the paleo world, so very familiar with Marcus. And I've come a little bit off of that over the years. Like, I eat grains. I eat lots of carbs. So do a lot of my clients. We whatever. But the thing about fasting and all that, there's protein modified fast and some of these other protocols people talk about where you fast, but you still have a lot of protein. Like, if your goal is building muscle, the one thing you have to watch out for is not losing that muscle,
right?
Just from doing something stupid. So like, if you fast for 3 days, you're probably going to lose some muscle. But if you fast for 3 days but actually eat protein during those 3 days, maybe you won't, right? So there's ways to be smart about it if your goal is still muscle, and try to go after some other benefits that you might go after with fasting.
How do you feel about, I think I'm pretty much fat adapted now, where I'm actually eating healthy fats and protein, but I have carbs once in a while, but not like, I think before I was in the place where if I missed a meal, I would feel it. Now I can miss a meal and I feel like I'm not into that glucose roller coaster. I feel like I'm there.
Well, you kind of mentioned it earlier with the muscle being a sink for glucose. Because of that, if you're building muscle and if you're training, you do have a lot of flexibility for having carbs in your diet. And I understand the low carb thing is big.
Yeah.
I know carnivore is big now. I think number one, does a diet work for you? That's the main criteria.
That's right. Yeah.
You? And to tell that, you have to experiment and collect biofeedback and try different things. So you want to try eating a moderate to high carb diet for a while, see how you feel. Then try eating a very low or keto style diet for a while. Compare the two. And if you tell me that, the keto works great for you, then that's the one like you should be on.
Yeah. And here's the reason I'm trying it. I'll tell you why. So I watched Forks Over Knives. That got me into, man, I went strict vegan for a while. I'm going to go strict and just see what happens. And you know what? My numbers all went down incredibly. I went to like 250 cholesterol down to like 170. Triglycerides went down to 70. And so, but then you know what? My glucose was still 101, even though my A1C was 5.5 or whatever. And I go, that's not good. It's because my family has diabetes and everything. So now I want to bring those. I'm going to try low carb for a while just to see if I can bring that A1C down and bring down that sugar down. Now I noticed since I've switched to healthy fats, and you probably know more about this than I do, that my cholesterol has gone up, but my triglycerides are down to 66. So I think that ratio maybe shows that maybe I have the large low density
Particles,
lipoproteins. Yeah. And so I think that's going to be all right. And if in the long run, if I can bring that A1C down, I just think that is kind of the heading over a lot of downstream health problems when we're constantly have chronic insulin right in the system.
Yeah, and I think that what you're hitting on with blood sugar control is totally valid for a lot of people, especially people who are sedentary or not training, because they're going to be very sensitive to that high carb intake, especially since they get it from high inflammatory and processed foods and stuff like that. But I will say, I think the evidence shows us that you can have all different levels of these macros. You can except protein. Protein needs to be high. But like fats and carbs, you can have a high to moderate carb diet and be perfectly healthy with all those markers, as long as you're training. Like, again, it comes down to what are you doing, and it depends on how you feel and what you're going after. So whether we agree or not, that's fine. I've been on so many podcasts where like people have all different opinions on diets.
No, and I'm
and like when I work with clients, I've got clients across the board. I got vegetarian and vegan. I have, plant-based. I have people who want to be low carb. However, I always say, try it out. Like, try it out.
No, you're open-minded.
Let's measure the blood work. And so on. If your goal right now is to build as much muscle as possible and we're in a gaining phase and you're eating in a surplus, the majority of people will do better on higher carbs. I'll just say that. And the evidence supports it as well, that they will. However, there's keto bodybuilders and keto strongmen and keto whatever. It's like, you know what I'm saying? You got to be open-minded about it.
Yeah, you got to be open-minded. I mean, to tell you the truth, up until 4 months ago, I mean, I had, pasta probably 5 days a week, pesto pasta, and so I'm just trying to go, and like, even though we can have a big impact with our actions and our lifestyle. So my wife has been, for like last 5 years, she eats ice cream frequently, and I'm not going to have that because, I don't want, a lot of it. And she just had her blood work, her blood glucose is, and she's 59, 75, not even close to 100. I'm thinking, what the hell?
I hear you, man. I hear you. And it's, hey, there's so many variables. It's so complicated. When people try to simplify this and say it's this one thing, my skeptical hat goes on. Like, what are they trying to sell me? Like, are they trying to sell me their carnivore book? Are they trying to sell me their, whatever, their coconut oil? Like, what are they trying to sell me? I always want to ask that, but it's multiple variables, not just with the food, but with your lifestyle. So for example, if you have type 2 diabetes, one of the most effective treatments for that is walking after meals.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
actually moderates that spike. You're not going to have it. Yeah.
Right. And so you could do that, or you can take metformin, which is a drug. But if you have, depending on how many of these things you've stacked on your life, negatively or positively, like your wife, she can eat ice cream because she's maybe doing a lot of other things right. I mean, she could have great genetics too. People have that too. And then the other thing is, like, I've had clients who went on carnivore, right? And they say, well, everything's great. Everything got better. But what we did is we reintroduced things and everything stayed good, but there were certain things that they couldn't tolerate. And that's why they benefited going on carnivore.
Yeah.
They just didn't know what it was because they cut so many things out and it acted like an elimination diet. So you got to be critical thinking about all this stuff. Yeah.
It's so weird the way that we've come so far from the President Kennedy's Challenge for Fitness program to where America, it's just funny because I'm 66, right? No medications. I don't want to take any. But people are weird. Oh, you don't take any pills? No, I don't take any pills. Yeah, it's too bad that's unusual, right?
Yeah,
people, I take 8.
Small minority. It's like a badge of pride. Like, show me your medicine cabinet. I'll show you.
Yeah. No way, man. I am not into that shit at all, man.
Yeah.
So that's great. Oh my God. So we hit on a lot and we're coming near the end here, man, but I hope you'll come back on because I think you and I could talk for a couple, 3 hours.
It's fun,
on
man.
all
I
this
love
stuff.
this stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love it. I forgot I had a thought, but it had to do. Oh yeah, I was going to ask you about this. Is there any negative to, or maybe too much, to taking creatine?
No negatives, unless you have an allergy, which is like 1% of the population. I had one client who had an allergy to it, but other than that, there's no negatives. I think everyone can benefit from 5 to 95. Like, little kids can take it and old people can take it. It's very safe, very well tested. It's good for performance because it brings more ATP into your muscles, right? Let you get a few extra reps in the gym. And now they're seeing it potentially is beneficial for cognitive health long term.
So I just started like, a few months ago. I mean, I was trying to research the negatives and I was only doing the 5 grams a day, right? Yeah. And so I know it builds in your system and maybe you take a break from it. But I mean, I'm like for most of my exercises, it's like I'm adding 30 pounds to every exercise. I feel an unbelievable amount of strength taking it.
So you're a big responder is what you're saying. Yeah. Because 20% of people apparently don't respond at all.
Really?
The other 80% have different levels of response. So once you're taking it, you can just take it for the rest of your life. It's not creatine's found in food. I mean, it's found in meat.
No, I know. Yeah. And I know about the ATP.
Acid, yeah.
What happened was I had tried it like 2 years ago and then I had a bladder infection and then I thought maybe that's the reason why. So I stopped. Right. But now I went back into it because I found no evidence that had any correlation.
Yeah, I know.
But man, I mean, the strength difference, Philip, is just amazing. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not even, that's why I was telling my friends, this is kind of scary because, I mean, I'm really having a positive results from this, man. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, vegans and vegetarians can definitely benefit because they don't get any in their diet, right? Like omnivores get like a gram a day maybe. And so when you take 5 grams a day, you're just blowing that up to the maximum your body can handle. And you really don't have to take a break. Like you could just take it for the rest of your life. It's not like...
And if like 5 or 10 is good, it's okay. Yeah.
I say 5. If you're a bigger person, like a 250-pound man or bigger, you might take like 7 grams or something,
Yeah. I'm only 160, but everything's on the upper body.
There you go.
The legs, and people, it's so frustrating. You know how this probably is. Because I have friends, they have tree trunk legs, man. They never have crossed the threshold of a gym. And people are like, oh, your legs are so skinny. They don't. I used to squat with these guys in California until we puked. That was the cause. That was the sign that you were squatting enough.
Genetics, man.
I mean, dude, I can never get my legs, but I still train them as much as I can because it's very important to have those weight-bearing exercises. But man, people who don't know it, man, I work my legs like you wouldn't believe, man.
Oh my God, man. I hear you. Like half my workouts are legs, and I also don't have huge legs, but I mean, they'd probably be skinnier without that.
Oh yeah. I think about what they would be if I didn't do it, man. So what's your when you're coaching, mostly groups or someone can come to you alone?
Up till now, it's been one-on-one only, and I'm launching a new group program in April 2024. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but it's a group program. But what's cool, Cliff, is like I've been in groups before, and a lot of them are kind of, I don't know, they're kind of hands-off. They give you some protocols and courses, and then you do Facebook or whatever group chats and whatever. I want my group program to be more like a one-on-one experience, but affordable. Like that's my goals, because I've been able to work with 15, 20 clients at a time. I want to be able to help like 200 clients at a time or 300.
Right.
More and more people like spread the message. That's why I have my podcast. So I work with just one-on-one now, but it's going to be both one-on-one and group in the future.
Yeah. There's a different, one of the Primal Health coaches, she does a thing which kind of, she's like, do one-on-one and then you need to transition to group. And so she does she uses like a Calendly, like she has a thing between this hour and this hour, 5 days a week. She's online to coach. So you can jump in one day or 2 days, and it could be 5 people, but it's up to you to jump in. And she does the large groups that way. And financially, I guess it works out. And she's going to be there during that hour anyway. So it kind of takes the scheduling part of it out of it, and it's up to the person. But since she's there multiple days, people can jump in. Might be a paradigm I'm going to look at, but yeah. It's
like Alex Hormozi has his in his $100 million offers. He has his matrix of all the different delivery methods. Group, single, this, that.
Yeah,
Zoom
I love it.
There's so many ways, and there's too many business coaches out there that are saying like this is the right way to do it.
No,
there's not one right way to do it.
There's not one way. Yeah,
and you might evolve from one to the next. Like if I did group coaching when I started, it wouldn't be a very good delivery, I don't think. Today, it's going to be amazing because I'm taking what I learned in one-on-one. For example, when you join my group program, you're going to get a custom nutrition plan. And by custom, I don't mean like a soft piece of software creates it for you. I mean, you're going to do an intake. Me or one of my team will look at it and give you a plan, because I want you to start off successfully from the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go through that plan and immediately have questions and say, okay, well, great. Now what do I do for this? What do I do for this? All right. Now we're going to have courses for different things, and we'll have live calls every week, like you suggested that other coach does.
Yeah.
Not every day, maybe one day, but like once a week.
Once a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're smart enough to jump into that, you're going to get basically what amounts to one-on-one coaching, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, well, I want to be respectful of your time. And so is it Wits and Weights? Is it .com, or what's your website?
Yeah, witsandweights.com. That's it.
Yeah, I love your website. And people can go there and they can contact you for coaching if they want to.
Absolutely. And check out my podcast, because that's totally free.
Oh, it's Wits and Weights podcast, right? Yeah. I'm going to subscribe to that. You're on iTunes and Apple and all that stuff?
Everything.
Oh,
check out that, because I don't work with people who haven't heard of me before. You can show up and say, I'm going to give you $10,000 and coach me. I'm going to say, sorry, unless you've listened to my podcast and know the science behind it and what we do, I want you to try things for yourself and be very curious first. And then you say, okay, now I want to go from 80% to 95%. Let's work together. That's my philosophy.
Well, when I walked to the gym here, I listened to a podcast. So I'm going to check you out, man. I'm going to check it out. So Wits and Weights podcast for sure, man. I'm always feeding my brain with good stuff. So feed the body and the mind. You're all about that. You got positive energy, Philip. I think this has been great. I'm going to push people. I hope they come to you and for coaching. I like your mindset, your open-mindedness to trying different things. And that's kind of, you're into a client-led coaching philosophy, which I think is most important. Some people have main things that they're interested in, and it should be catered to their specific needs and wants, right?
That's everything, man. That's everything. And I love your show too, by the way, because it's personal development and all that, but you do have a lot of this health focus in there, which I definitely noticed right away when I started going through your recent episodes. Like, okay, cool. I can jive with that.
Thank you, brother. Listen, we're going to end right now, and I hang around for a little debriefing after the show. Hey, check out Philip, man. Go to his website, Wits and Weights, and check out the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm going to have all the links in the YouTube description and also on the podcast show notes. They're going to be there. Please go check him out, and I'll catch you on the next episode.
Take it easy.